Badfish.
A few other things that TYB wanted us to specifically touch on was, how do we hold a runner on? Now when we do hold a runner on, we want to make sure that when the pitcher is getting ready to get in his stretch, that we're in a good fielding position, our glove is out front, and that our hand is out front to where we can see, and that our foot is in a good position to where we're not blocking the base or we're on top of the base. We specifically want our foot to be on the outside edge or parallel to that front edge of the base. The other part is, after we know that the pitcher is going to the plate, how we come off the base is very important. So after the pitch is being delivered, we want the first baseman to get off and be in a good fielding position. We also want to take a look at some basic hitting mechanics. Some of the things that are going to benefit you as a coach to look for things as far as your players in terms of what are some absolutes. Everybody has their own hitting philosophy, but in terms of mechanics go, we just want to take a brief look at some of the absolute mechanical things that are going to help a player's swing be consistent and successful. So number one is being able to reach the outside corner of the plate. They should be in a position to where they can touch physically the outside of the plate with their bat. Now, in terms of balance, we want to make sure that the feet are specifically about shoulder width apart in terms of on the pitch. Some have their own style, they start here, they do this, whatever, but in terms of the actual balance position, by the time that front foot gets down, they need to be in a good balanced position to where that they can use their legs to generate some power with their hips to get the bat head through. In terms of the swing, getting ready, as the batter's getting ready to hit, basically their timing is going off of the pitcher. And the pitcher's timing is usually coming back, and then by the time they reach the top portion of their delivery, that's when the hitter should be getting himself ready to swing the bat. So as the pitcher's getting to his position, the hitter should be getting that front foot down and the hands back in a strong position, so that as they go to strike the ball, that they're actually incorporating the hip and the backside to throw the bat out front into a good strong position. A lot of terminology that we hear is palm up and palm down on contact. If we can get into this position here, we're going to hit the ball pretty squarely every time. When we talk about gripping the bat, we want to make sure that we're using primarily the fingers, and we're lining these knuckles up to hold the bat or place the bat in the fingers, like so. Trying not to get the bat too deep into the palm, which will actually limit the extension part of our swing. Now, as we hold the bat, we want to be nice and relaxed and loose with the fingers and just kind of let the bat rest in there, so to speak. And then as we bring it up, then that kind of translates into that. Okay? Now, as we go into our balance portion, again, this bottom side, we want to make sure that this is strong here, so that as that front foot gets down, that this base is really the foundation of the initial part of the swing. If this is late, the hands are going to be late. So getting that front foot down in a strong physical position is very important. So when you do that, you want to check to see where your hitters are at when they're taking their stride. If they're late here, chances are they're going to be late here. So when we talk about balance and strength, we want to initiate the swing more with that stride and the hands being in a strong position right here. Okay, right off the back shoulder is usually a pretty strong position for our body to be in, so that we can generate that throwing motion of the bat through the strike zone. If the hands fall down or dip, or we throw the bat head outside, we're going to take a longer route to the ball, and success is not going to be as consistent. So what we want to try to establish is, when that stride foot gets down, these hands are in a strong position and they're still back, and then initiate with the hip first, and then the hands follow through. And again, talking about the lower half, it's very important that we understand that this back leg is not a device that we want to use to spin on the backside or squish the bug, which we hear a lot of. That's really not what we want that bottom or back leg to do. What we'd like for this back leg to do is almost like what a pitcher does or a thrower in the field, is that when a pitcher comes up, he actually drives off the inside toe here and forces this lateral movement to go this direction with a push that goes this way. So we don't want to create a spinning motion, because that's going to force our swing to be all rotational, and that's not the goal. We'd like to have somewhat of a lateral push here, just as if a pitcher was throwing off of a mound here, so that when this front leg locks out, now we're in a position where we're driving, and that toe should literally be able to point in the ground like that, releasing all of our energy going out that direction. Once we get out to our contact point here, this is a good strong position. It's important that our follow through is able to follow on the same path out towards the field and extend and point out in that direction of the field. A lot of what we'll see sometimes is that this bat head gets in this position or comes around, and all of a sudden it ends up over here real fast. That's not what we want. We want to make sure that players are here, good contact point, and then extending out towards the middle of the field and releasing the bat head out there, and then a good follow through typically is up on the outside shoulder. And these are just basic fundamentals that will get you to a good starting point, a good load, strong contact point, and a good release and follow through. One of the things as coaches we want to make sure that we're aware of is when we're at third base, we always want to try to help our players, and sometimes we hurt them more than we help them because we give them too much to think about. Understand that players, they can really only carry one positive thought in their head while they're at bat. So if we give them 2 different commands or 3 different commands at the same time, what they try to do in their mind is to do what the coach is telling them, but they lose the focus of actually driving the baseball, and that's goal number 1. So we want to make sure that they're not focused on the hips and the head and the hands all on the same thing. Now you're taking away from what they're actually trying to accomplish. The practice is the key to get these mechanics ironed out and the best that we can, so that when they get in the game and there's pressure added, we want to make sure that their positive thought process is getting them to do what we want them to do, and not confusing them to try to just think physically. They've got to be out there and focus on driving the baseball, and that's ultimately the goal that we want to get them to. Now we're going to talk a little bit about pitching and what the goal is for our pitchers. Number 1 is we want them to be consistent and throw strikes. That's obvious, but we want to make sure mechanically we're helping them to accomplish that goal. So consistent mechanics are going to produce consistent results. So when they get on the rubber, especially the younger players, it's probably easiest to just have them throw mostly from the stretch position. If they get in the windup, they kind of lose their sense of mechanics and their body control. So we want to try and keep it as simple as we possibly can, because once again, the ultimate goal is throw strikes. So to do that, an easy way to kind of get them to understand simple mechanics is ball behind the back, take their sign. When they come set, we want to make sure that their body is nice and relaxed and their hands are in a good position here. Their feet aren't too close together, too far apart, but again, shoulder width apart is always a good balance point in terms of keeping our body under control. So as they're picking up their sign and they're getting ready to release, that would be step 1, is coming set and to this position here. Number 2 would be their balance point, is bringing this knee up almost to this glove here so that they're in a nice balanced position. So our balance point is straight up. We're not leaning back. We're not leaning back this way. We want to be almost as if our back was up against a wall there. So as we're here, boom, now we're ready to generate that force and drive towards the plate in a positive direction. Now, once we get there, you can think in terms of point the glove where it needs to go, right to the catcher. And then this hand is basically spread out, so they're in this sort of position here, okay? So as they go to make their initial drive and throw, this glove is going to come back in here, and this arm is going to get up into a good throwing position above the head, so that it can drive down and follow through across the outside of this front knee, and the chest should be over top of the knee. If we get to the point where they're separating here and this glove flies out this way, now their body again becomes rotational and they're throwing that direction. So again, from beginning, set, start here, come set, to the balance point, to the separation, pull this in, and now we're here, and we follow through, and now we're in a good balanced position when we finish. Remember, in terms of when it comes to your pitchers, make sure that if there's a pitch count that's in place, make sure that you're abiding by that. Player safety is always number one. Number two is that we want to make sure that we're putting players on the mound that are consistently able to throw strikes or be around the strike zone to give the rest of the team a chance. They're not out there to strike players out. They're not out there to pick runners off. They're there to maintain the game and the flow of the game and how it goes. So we want to be around the plate. Yes, we want to hold runners close if that's what we do. We also want to make sure that we're not throwing too many break-in balls and things like that. Again, we want longevity for our pitchers, so it's not win at all cost. So good mechanics, good pitch count, and just knowing what the pitcher's mental makeup is, what they're doing out there. If they start walking a bunch of players, we got to make sure that that's not putting the team in a good position. So not everybody's going to have a great day every time that they go out there. So we're looking for consistency, number one, and number two is definitely we want to make sure that they're keeping their team in the ball game.